The shuttle rattled as it locked into the docking arms of Zaraka Prime. Lieutenant Mason Hale sat rigid in his seat, helmet balanced on his knees, staring out the viewport as the alien station unfolded like a steel blossom in the void. Layers of rings spun counter to one another, lattices of light pulsing between spires that jutted into nothing. The sight stole the breath from the young diplomat sitting across from him. "Looks like a cathedral," she whispered. Mason gave a faint nod. To him, it looked more like a fortress. The kind built by predators who wanted prey to feel small before stepping inside. The docking clamps thudded home. The hatch hissed open, and a wave of alien air, dry, tinged with metal and spice, rolled through. The ambassador, gray-haired and smiling with polished courtesy, rose first. Behind him, Mason fell into step, boots ringing hollow against the deck. They entered the reception hall. Gravity shifted subtly, pulling at Mason's stomach as he walked. Towers of alien architecture soared overhead, constructed in impossible angles. The crowd waiting for them was a sea of scales, fur, carapace, and glimmering bioluminescence. Dozens of species. Hundreds of eyes. Whispers rippled through the assembly. Mason caught phrases translated by his implant. Soft-shelled, weak-boned, omnivore curiosities. Laughter trailed behind the words. The humans were the smallest delegation present, and they knew it. The ambassador pressed forward with the diplomat's poise. Mason let his gaze drift over the predators gathered along the edges, the croc most of all. They loomed above the others, armored hides glistening like obsidian. Their leader, High Warlord Zyrith, sat on a dais carved from what looked like bone, mandibles clicking in amusement as he regarded the humans. His eyes lingered on Mason, predatory and cold. Mason did not flinch. He'd learned long ago that showing nerves to a predator was an invitation. Instead, he let his expression remain neutral, controlled, while his fingers brushed the scars on his knuckles. He had fought in the colonies. He knew the look of an enemy appraising flesh. The procession led the humans into the council chamber. Tiered seating stretched in a vast circle, species ranked by prestige and power. The humans were directed to the lowest ring, beside a cluster of insectoid merchants, whose antennae twitched in irritation. Above, the croc occupied the highest row, their thrones bristling with engraved weapons. Mason noted the deliberate placement. Humans at the bottom, croc at the top. The message was clear. The ambassador cleared his throat, voice amplified through the chamber's translators. On behalf of Earth and her colonies, we extend our gratitude for the opportunity to participate in this gathering of cultures. His words were practiced, polished. He spoke of cooperation, trade, and the promise of peace. Few listened. Delegates shifted in their seats, some openly bored. Mason's jaw tightened. Diplomacy was necessary, but the condescension was suffocating. He could feel the station itself pressing down on them, a reminder that humans were small fish in a vast and hungry ocean. When the session adjourned, the assembly drifted into a reception hall where food and drink were displayed on crystalline tables. Alien delicacies writhed in their dishes, still alive. Mason caught the faint smell of blood mixed with ozone. Servers offered humans a tray of pale fruit, soft and easily consumed. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Ambassador, Lieutenant," a towering reptilian delegate crooned, stepping near. Its tongue flicked over serrated teeth. "Do your kind not consume flesh? We hear you are omnivores, yet here you eat only fruit." Mason glanced at the plate of glistening larvae the creature gestured to. Their shells clicked faintly as they writhed. He gave a small smile. "We choose our meals. We don't eat whatever's crawling in front of us." The alien barked laughter, joined by a chorus from nearby delegates. "Choice. Such a luxury of the weak." Mason let the words pass. He felt the ambassador's subtle hand signal, "Stand down." He did. For now. The young diplomat, eager to prove herself, reached for one of the larvae. Her hand trembled as she lifted it to her lips. Mason caught her wrist gently, shaking his head. She flushed with embarrassment, retreating from the stairs. "Wise," Mason murmured low enough only she could hear. "Don't give them what they want." They moved deeper into the hall, but the ridicule followed in murmurs and pointed glances. To the aliens, humans were novelties at best. Curiosities brought to amuse the predators. Mason had seen this game before, in different wars, under different banners. Predators always laughed at prey, until prey fought back. At the far end of the chamber, Zyrith rose from his throne, towering over lesser species. His voice carried through the hall like iron dragged over stone. And here they are, the Earthlings. Soft skin. Weak bones. Harmless creatures who speak of peace while knowing nothing of strength. Laughter erupted again. Mason's hand twitched at his side, but his face remained composed. He felt the young diplomat stiffen beside him. The ambassador, ever controlled, inclined his head with a smile. Perhaps harmlessness is strength of its own, warlord. Zyrith's mandibles clicked, a low, mocking chuckle. His gaze never left Mason. Mason returned it evenly, eyes like flint. He said nothing. The moment stretched. A silent exchange, predator testing prey. Then Zyrith dismissed him with a snort and turned away, as though bored. But Mason knew. Predators never looked away because they were bored. They looked away when they were waiting for the right moment to strike. He stood still amid the laughter, the sense of alien blood and spice thick in the air, and thought of the old saying from his marine days: respect is earned. Sometimes with words. Sometimes with blood. For now, words would have to do. But not forever. The banquet hall of Zaraka Prime gleamed with crystalline pillars and silvered floors that shimmered like liquid. Long tables stretched across the chamber, laden with alien delicacies, many still alive, twitching and hissing as they were presented. The air buzzed with chatter in 100 languages, layered over by the steady hum of translation systems. The humans were ushered to one side, seated near the bottom tier of the chamber. Before them, a platter of soft fruit had been placed, colorless, sweet-smelling, and deliberately chosen to appear weak compared to the raw slabs of flesh and writhing prey offered to others. Mason Hale sat at the edge of the table, eyes sweeping the crowd. He noted who laughed when their delegation entered, who whispered with mandibles clicking or feathers ruffling. Predators everywhere, waiting for a show. High Warlord Zyrith rose from his throne at the head of the chamber. His armored bulk cast shadows that seemed to stretch across the floor. His voice rasped, magnified by the chamber's acoustic arrays. Tonight, he declared, we honor the Dominion and its allies. We feast as predators do, taking life into ourselves to prove dominion over the weak. His multifaceted eyes glowed faintly as he gestured toward the human table. And among us, prey masquerading as diplomats. Omnivores too timid to hunt, too fragile to kill. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The insected merchants beside the humans drummed their legs in amusement. The ambassador forced a smile. We thank the station for its hospitality. Zyrith ignored him. His gaze locked on Mason. Perhaps one of you will prove me wrong. Show us your strength. Eat as predators eat. Take life in your jaws. An attendant stepped forward with a dish. A massive grub, translucent, wriggling in a pool of dark ichor. Its mandibles clicked weakly, its body pulsing with veins of bioluminescent fluid. The alien crowd leaned closer, anticipation thick in the air. Mason stared at the thing, then lifted his eyes to Zyrith. His voice was calm, steady. We choose what we consume. That choice is what separates us from beasts. A hiss of mockery swept the hall. Zyrith's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Choice is the excuse of prey. The young human diplomat sitting 2 seats away shifted uncomfortably. Sweat glistened on her temple. In a rash attempt to prove herself, she reached for the dish. Mason's hand shot out, but too late. She lifted the grub, gagging as its legs clawed against her wrist. She forced it toward her mouth, jaw trembling. The moment it touched her tongue, she convulsed. Venom burned through her throat. She choked violently, collapsing against the table as foam bubbled at her lips. Gasps and laughter erupted. Aliens slammed fists and claws on the tables in savage amusement. Fragile! One shouted. Harmless! Mason was already moving. He yanked the grub from her mouth, slammed it back into the dish, and turned her on her side. With quick, practiced movements, he forced the poison out, steadying her until her spasms eased. The ambassador called for medics, but none came. No one moved to help. Only laughter echoed. Xyrath leaned forward, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. Your guardian plays at healer, but he cannot change what you are. Weak. Pathetic. A species unfit to sit among predators. Mason's jaw locked. He placed the young woman upright, her breathing shallow but steady. Then he turned, meeting Xyrath's gaze across the hall. His voice cut through the noise. Don't mistake restraint for weakness. The hall quieted briefly at his tone, but Xyrath only chuckled. Restraint? He descended the steps from his throne, each clawed foot ringing against the floor. Then let us test this restraint. He stopped before the human table, towering above them. Without warning, he lashed out. His clawed hand struck the young diplomat across the face, blood splattering onto the table. The chamber erupted in roars of savage delight. The ambassador half rose, horrified. Mason stood slowly, every muscle taut. His voice was low, controlled, but carried an edge that made nearby aliens still. Don't touch her again. Xyrath tilted his head, mandibles curling into a grotesque grin. And if I do, little prey? What will you do? The humans around Mason froze, sensing the shift in the air. The predator's taunt lingered like poison, daring him to act. Mason didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence, the tightening of his jaw, the cold focus in his eyes, it was enough. But Xyrath wanted blood. He reached down again, claws curling, dragging them across the wounded diplomat's cheek until fresh crimson welled. The young woman whimpered, too dazed to resist. The hall waited, hushed with anticipation. Predators smelled the moment, tasted the tension. Mason's restraint snapped like a brittle wire. Enough. The word was quiet, almost conversational, yet it cut through the silence like a blade. He moved before thought could catch him. A blur of motion across the table, chairs crashing aside as he lunged. The crowd gasped as the human struck, no hesitation, no warning. In that instant, the illusion of harmlessness shattered. The words still hung in the air, enough, when Mason moved. One heartbeat he was behind the table, controlled and silent. The next he had launched across it, a blur of fury cutting through the stunned assembly. Plates crashed, crystal shattered, fruit scattered across the floor. High Warlord Xyrath's mandibles snapped open in surprise, but Mason was already on him. He slammed into the towering warlord with soldier's precision and animal force, driving him backward into the banquet table. The impact rattled the chamber. Gasps erupted. For the first time in living memory, a human struck first. Xyrath roared, clawing wildly, but Mason's grip locked around his arm. He twisted hard, bones snapping with a sickening crack. The warlord bellowed in rage and pain, his armored hide scraping against the floor as he thrashed. Mason didn't hesitate. Years of combat training fused with something older, something primal, buried deep in human instinct. He pinned the alien's head to the table, teeth bared. The chamber fell into stunned silence as Mason did the unthinkable. He drove his jaws into Xyrath's face. Flesh tore beneath his teeth. Alien ichor burst across his lips, bitter and metallic, coating his mouth. The warlord screamed, a high, gurgling sound cut short as Mason ripped a chunk free. Horror rippled through the crowd. Predators who had mocked humanity recoiled. Insects hissed, avians shrieked, reptilian jaws snapped shut in shock. Even the hardened warriors of the Dominion faltered, frozen by the sheer savagery of the act. Mason rose slowly, blood dripping from his chin, chest heaving. His eyes swept the hall, cold and steady, no longer the eyes of prey but of something no one had expected, a predator among predators. Xyrath writhed on the floor, half his face a mangled ruin. He gurgled, trying to rise, but Mason's boot came down hard on his chest, pinning him. Humanity does not bow, Mason said, his voice low and even, carrying into every corner of the chamber. We endure. We fight. And when you push too far, we bite back. No one moved. The ambassador stood frozen, horrified yet calculating. The young diplomat, blood still streaking her cheek, stared wide-eyed, fear mixing with something else, pride. A guard twitched at the edge of the chamber, hand hovering over his weapon. Mason's gaze snapped to him, unflinching, and the guard froze. Across the room, other warriors shifted uncertainly. None dared approach. Zyrith coughed thick ichor, mandibles clicking weakly. Mason leaned down, his voice a whisper meant for the warlord alone but amplified by the silence. You wanted to test us. Now you've seen what happens when we stop holding back. With one final shove, Mason slammed the alien's head against the shattered table. The warlord went limp, lifeless. The hall erupted, not in outrage, but in stunned silence so deep it pressed against the ears. Dozens of species stared, their worldviews splintering. The fragile omnivores they had dismissed had just killed a warlord with teeth and bare hands. Mason released his grip, straightened, and wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. He turned, not to the warlord's guards, not to the predators above, but to the wounded human diplomat behind him. He steadied her with a hand on her shoulder, the gesture calm, protective, almost gentle. Then he faced the assembly. The ambassador, pale but quick-minded, stepped forward. His voice trembled at first, then steadied. Let this be understood. Humanity does not seek war. We came here in peace. But we are not toys. We are not pets. And we are not prey. Murmurs spread through the chamber, fearful, awed, uncertain. Some species shifted uncomfortably, others regarded Mason with a new, wary respect. Mason's gaze swept across them all. He spoke quietly, yet every ear strained to catch the words. You thought we were harmless. He let the words sink in, his voice steady as stone. We aren't. Remember that. For several long seconds, no one dared to breathe. Then, from the upper tiers, a single alien delegate, scaled, scarred, eyes burning with warrior respect, rose and gave a slow, deliberate nod. Others followed, some hesitantly, some with clear recognition of a truth they could no longer ignore. The balance in the room had shifted. Humanity's place among them was no longer a question of tolerance. It was a matter of survival, for everyone else. Mason turned, guiding the injured diplomat toward the exit. The ambassador followed, his expression grim but resolved. Behind them, the chamber remained hushed, the image of bloodied human teeth etched into every memory. As the heavy doors closed behind the humans, silence still reigned. On Zaraka Prime, for the first time, predators understood, Earth's children were not prey. They were predators too.